Finally, India has presented their new tank. This new light tank has been in development for a couple of years, and it is finally here. The tank in question is the new Zorawar light tank. But is it any good, and how does it relate to Arjun? Are they trying to replace Arjun with this new tank? Well, the short answer is no, but I will get to that a bit later. First, let's take a look at the technical capabilities of this tank. The first thing I want to talk about is the turret, because the turret is not Indian. It is a Cockerel 3105 modular turret from Belgium, and it comes with some pretty nice features. The main armament is a Cockerel 105mm HP gun, which fires NATO standard ammunition. This is not the best gun out there, far from it, but it seems to be the trend for modern light tanks to be equipped with the 105mm guns, even though the low recoil 120mm guns have been developed and are being offered, but I guess just going with the 105mm gun is cheaper. The types of ammunition offered for the gun are APFSDS, heat, hash, canister and smoke, as well as a gun-launched ATGM Phalaric 105, which we do know they will include in the loadout of this tank. As for the rest of ammunition, nothing has been disclosed. I would expect them to at least get APFSDS and heat or hash alongside it. The biggest drawback of this turret, in my opinion, is the autoloader, or rather the low capacity of it. The autoloader only has a capacity for 12 shells. The rest, I would assume, are placed in the hull. This sort of limits the amount of types of shells the tank can carry, because if you take a little bit of each, you might find yourself lacking the necessary ammunition when needed. That is why I assume they will not opt to take every type that is available, but rather two types of regular shells and the gun-launched ATGM, which we do know they will be using in this tank. Now, this turret has a nice feature that goes along really well with what this tank is intended for, the mountainous areas on the borders with China. You see, this tank was designed as a response to the Chinese starting to deploy their light tanks ZTQ-15 on the border with India. Light tanks generally have better mobility on high altitudes where the lack of oxygen can cause the heavier main battle tanks to underperform. And since it is meant to be deployed in the mountains, it is not going to replace Arjun, because as I have mentioned many times on my channel, Arjun is designed to be used in the desert area on the border between Pakistan and India, so a completely different design ideology went into this tank. Now, the nice feature I wanted to talk about is the gun elevation and depression. The gun can be depressed down to -10 degrees and elevated up to 42 degrees. For mountainous terrain, this is excellent, since it will give the tank ability to engage threats that are much lower or higher in altitude, which is obviously a problem in such terrain. As for the fire control system, both gunner and commander are equipped with the same sight with 3rd generation thermal imaging system. Both sights appear to be Safran Paseo, as well as a remotely operated weapon station. Now, I could not find any information on what exactly is mounted on the sides of the turret. It's either ATGM launchers or launchers for loitering ammunition, and I would assume it is the latter, since we do know they will be using the gun-launched ATGM. Therefore, there wouldn't really be a need to install even more ATGMs to the tank. If those are in fact launchers for the loitering ammunition, I would have to say that I do like the idea. If you saw my last video, you would remember me saying how I'm not a fan of what the German and French companies were doing with loitering munition launchers, basically replacing half of the ammunition of a tank with a launcher. And I did say that having launchers on the side of the turret would be much preferable, just like in this case. The hull, unlike the turret, is actually Indian, and to be honest, there isn't really much to say there, since the power pack housed inside the hull is not Indian either. The protection offered by the hull is probably on par with the turret, which is level 5 by Stanek 4569, meaning that it offers protection against 25mm APFSDS, basically meaning it will protect against lower caliber autocannons, and that is it. It is pretty obvious that neither the turret nor the hull can really take a hit from any AT launcher, as there is no composite armor or explosive reactive armor on the tank. But what about the side armor add-ons? Well, I couldn't find any confirmation on what they actually are, just people speculating whether they are actual armor add-ons or hollow pieces to give the amphibious ability to the tank. But to me, they appear to be actual armor add-ons rather than hollow pieces, since, logically speaking, there aren't that many rivers in the mountainous areas between China and India, and those that are there are pretty rocky and shallow, not really something you cross with an amphibious vehicle. And unfortunately, there aren't any details on the level of protection offered with these add-on armor pieces. The turret of the tank is equipped with laser warning receivers, which should warn the crew when a tank is being lased by a laser rangefinder or laser guided ammunition. There were some people claiming how the tank has a hard kill active protection system or some protection against top attack munition, but no, it does not, at least not in this configuration that they presented to the public. We will have to wait and see for the actual serial production to see what the final model will be equipped with. But I certainly hope they do, because in its current configuration it would be very vulnerable to enemy anti-tank weapons, so mounting literally any hard kill active protection system would help out quite a bit. Hard kill systems are, in my opinion, essential for modern light tanks, so it would be better if some of those talks about a hard kill APS do turn out to be true. Oh, and also, the front hull appears to have sort of a weak spot on the upper front plate. This appears to be a fuel port like on the Arjun tank. I have no idea why they took this design choice from the Arjun, as it is obviously not optimal, but on a lightly armored tank like this, it is not that much of a problem, since, as I already stated, it can pretty much only stop small caliber autocannons, so having a slightly less armored part isn't a huge issue. But of course, it would have been better if there was no weak spot to begin with, but again, not a huge problem. As for the mobility, the tank is equipped with the American Cummins diesel engine. I couldn't find what exact variant is supposed to be in the tank because, again, there is conflicting information. Some sources state that the 1000 horsepower variant is used in the tank, and others claim that the 750 or the 760 horsepower variant is used. If someone has some definitive answer to this, please let me know. Now, even though this engine is designed and originally made in America, there is a chance that it will be produced in India, since Cummins has a big facility in India, so the engines might be produced locally in the future, or at least assembled locally. So overall, this tank is not terrible, believe it or not. I think choosing already existing systems instead of trying to develop something different was a really smart choice, and unlike Arjun, there really isn't much I can complain about here. It is a light tank meant to face other light tanks, although I do have to say that the Chinese ETQ-15 definitely has a much superior protection, since the ERA on it and the possible composite armor would mean it would at least be able to sustain some 80 rockets or missiles, at least older ones. But if Zorawar and the ZTQ-15 went face to face, the outcome would depend on a lot of factors, but definitely not on the capabilities of the actual tanks, because they can probably easily penetrate each other and are very comparable in all aspects. Zorawar has been in development for at least 4 years from what I could gather, since the development started as a response to the 2020 border crisis, and we did actually get the concept of the tank back in 2022, where it did appear like it will in fact feature the John Cockerell turret with the 105mm gun, which at the time was also presented on a Leopard 1 on the Eurosatory. So it approximately took them 2 years to come up with the concept, and 2 years to come from the concept to the real tank, which is honestly pretty fast. And now, here we are. An initial order on these tanks has been placed by the Indian Ministry of Defense, but they still need to conduct some trials, and in the next couple of years we should see them rolling off the production lines if everything goes to plan. That would be all. If you like my content, you can support me on Patreon. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.